I'm living life tonight.
Imagine if your life had a soundtrack and it was a St. Lucian song. What song would that be? Hello, I'm Herma Mark, and this is Homemade Melodies. On this program, we take a deep dive into the life and work of some of St. Lucia's biggest public figures and personalities as they share with us their favorite homemade melodies.
I'm living life, ain't got no worries. Okay, you see, I'm living life. No time for stories. I am stress-free, so full of vibes. Energy nice, come chill with me. Cause who you bless no makers. So we put your name in reverse.
Our guest today is a father, husband, and proud son of Grosley. He spent the majority of his life in service to the community and our country. First as a teacher, then as a youth and sports officer, coach, and sports therapist. He represented St. Lucia as a national athlete, national coach, served as a senator, and the achievement of which he is most proud thus far, apart from being a father, is that he's the representative for the constituency of Grosley for almost 10 years. And currently, he is the Minister for Equity, Social Justice, Empowerment, Youth Development and Sports, and Local Government. Honorable Lenard Spider Montoute, welcome to Homemade Melodies, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, and it is indeed a pleasure to be with you.
How are you doing? I know that, we're in the COVID-19 era, and it can be difficult for a lot of people. How are you doing with all of that?
Well, it is certainly testing times, and of course, in addition to all of that, we are in the throes of an upcoming general election, which I intend to contest. And if you consider the fact that I have by far one of the largest constituencies and certainly the most populous constituency, my work is cut out in terms of, the effort I have to put in and the time consumption. I probably have, at best, twice that of the closest constituency to mine in terms of size and population, and in some cases 5 times the effort has to be put in compared to other constituencies. But I am no stranger to challenges, and so I'm coping. They say when the going gets tough, you know who gets going.
And I have to ask, Spider is a name that from the time I know of you, it's a name that I know, but I have no clue where that nickname came from. So what's the story there? How were you named Spider?
Well, it came from my peers. I grew up in the days when just about everyone had a nickname. Mm-hmm. In my case, it came, because, should I say I wasn't as well built back then?
A little lanky.
A little lanky, If you call me skinny, then in terms of my size, you describe me as being skinny in the Creole Meg. Mm. And so I already, in my early teens, I was as tall as I am.
Okay.
And that did not help my cause. That made me look even more slender and made my limbs look even longer than they actually were. And so, I remember being stung by a bee right in the center of my forehead. And I was disfigured because of the swelling and so on. And this guy just looked at me and said, well, it really looked like Spider-Man, And there the name started, and it just stayed. It came from Spider-Man to Spider. And of course, when your people christen you, you have no choice.
Yeah, you have to stick with it.
You have to stick with it.
Yeah. You have to stick with it. Yeah. Now, you made reference to your childhood. Tell us a little bit about, your childhood. How was it for you growing up?
Well, in a nutshell, tough but fulfilling. Okay. I did not enjoy a life of affluence. However, I must say that my experiences as a child were very diverse and gave me a grounding that has, to a great extent, shaped who I am today. Mm-hmm. And so I have no regrets about my childhood. I think, I learned quite a lot of life lessons, and I learned to appreciate a lot of little things in life.
I get that. And you know what that reminds me of? This is Homemade Melodies, and we are also talking about your playlist and some of the homemade melodies that you like the most. And All in Me is kind of what that reminds me of by Hoop Black, which is one of the songs that you mentioned. Yes. Tell me, what is it about that song that you like?
Well, first of all, Hoop Black is one of my favorite artists, local artists. Mm-hmm. I'm a Calypso fan, going way back. And if I'm to tell you how far back it goes, people may think that I'm not old enough to appreciate calypso from back in those days. It goes way back into the 70s.
Oh, wow.
And in the days of Jackson, Aquila, Pele, those calypsonians. And so, I mean, All in Me, I find it to be inspirational. I find it to be motivational. You know, the kind of song that instills self-confidence.
Yes.
And, you know, because I derive a lot of my own motivation and drive internally. And so, you know, if I sing a song such as All in Me in my head, it prepares me for whatever challenge, you know, that is ahead of me, and so on and so. Not to mention the melodious voice of Herb Black, you know, the harmony that goes into his song, the crooning that he's known for, all of that, you know, gave me a great appreciation for that song and, of course, for the artist himself.
Nice. I agree with you completely, and I think now is a great moment for us to just take a pause and appreciate that one. So let's go ahead and take a listen to All in Me by Herb Black.
Yes, I am a calypsonian by nature, and it is my pleasure to put lyrics together. I'm here to bring you true calypso flavor for so many years. That's what you waited for. Originality, stage personality, it's all in me. Yeah, right here in this body. It's in a man, money I know. Yeah, die.
All right. So getting into, well, still on the topic of your childhood, you spoke to us about, you know, how you got the name Spider. Tell me a little bit about the games that you played and how you spent your time as a child.
Well, I grew up knowing myself always to be an outdoor person. It's not as if I had much of a choice. There was nothing at home, really. I mean, today you have young people with Nintendo, with internet, with television. I mean, I didn't have that privilege as a child growing up. I wouldn't stay indoors watching the four walls of the rooms of our house. So I was always outdoors, and I engaged in every single sport of my day that was available in my community, such as soccer, football, cricket, track and field, and table tennis. Well, swimming as well. But my favorite sport really was cricket.
Okay, nice.
Not necessarily the one that I was most accomplished in, but it's the one I loved the most.
It was the one you loved
And
the most.
I had the good fortune of representing Grosley in football, in cricket, in track and field.
And not only that, you took it a little further into building a career, not only as an athlete, but you've served in many areas in the sporting sector. So tell us a little bit, starting with you as an athlete.
Well, I gravitated more to track and field because that's where I experienced the most success. Okay. That's where I got the most recognition. And as a youngster growing up, I mean, I must say, did a lot for my self-esteem. It went a long way in boosting my ego, you know. And so the simple recognition, and those were the days when television on a local level was just beginning to mushroom. You had people like Teddy Francis as a sportscaster, you know, doing interviews, covering the MNC games, and, you know, you see yourself on television. I mean, there's no greater
joy
thrill than sitting in your living room and watching yourself, you know, on television and so on. And not to mention the fact that I had some success too.
Right.
You know, and so that really, I think, contributed in shaping me, in, you know, determining who I am today. I mean, a lot of the discipline that I learned was derived from my experiences in sports. I think the character, some of the character traits that I have, I think may have grown out of my experiences in sports. So, I mean, I represented St. Lucia in track and field. I once played a game on the St. Lucia President 11 cricket team. Not to mention, I also mentioned that I represented Grosley in cricket. And soccer, I represented Grosley in soccer as well. But like I said, my favorite sport was cricket. The one in which I was most accomplished was track and field.
It was track and field. Now,
yeah, I actually made the OECS team apart from the national team.
In track and field?
In track and field, yeah.
Now, for me, that is very interesting because most people would gravitate to the sport that they are best at as their favorite. But you say you were not as accomplished in cricket. What made it your favorite?
Well, I mean, I love the game of cricket. I grew up watching, or not really watching, listening to cricket, because back in those days, you listened to cricket on the radio. And the true heroes of the day that I knew who resembled me were cricketers.
I see. Who are some of those?
Well,
Name drop
certainly,
first.
first and foremost, Vivian Richards. That was a man that I admired tremendously. I think not just because of his prowess as a cricketer, but because of his consciousness. I mean, this is a man who refused to go to South Africa to play when you had to be considered an honorary white person to qualify to go to South Africa to play. He took a stance against that apartheid system that I admire, despite the purse that he could have gotten from it. He turned that down on the grounds of principle and refused to go. I mean, like I said, not just his prowess, but his consciousness as a black man, I really admire, and I have the highest regard and respect for him. I mean, further afield, I mean, you have people like Muhammad Ali, who, I mean, is an icon in himself. Many people, I mean, I think, again, quite apart from his skill as a boxer, I admire his consciousness and the way he stood for his race, at a time when it was not the most popular thing to do. And so I say cricket because I had a connection with cricket. I mean, we played cricket just about anywhere in the backyard, on the sidewalk.
Using just about anything too, right?
And using just about anything, the coconut bats, the coconut palm for bats, and the small breadfruit as a ball. You're taking plastic and heating it up and rolling it into a ball, tin cans. You know, whatever it is, we had makeshift, cricket gear back in those days, and we really enjoyed ourselves and so on. But I think along the way, the subjectivity of cricket didn't go too well with me.
Okay.
I was never, in my early days, a very assertive person. And I felt a sense that, okay, it was always easy to tell me, you're the 12th man, or you're the extra, because I wouldn't make any fuss about it. I was just easygoing, taking everything lightly and so on. But I found track and field to be more of an objective sport. I mean, you either first or you second or you last.
Right.
So if I'm first, you can't deny me. And so I enjoyed and experienced more success there. And of course, the thrill of the success,
of the win.
thrill of winning, and the recognition it brought, and all of that, the satisfaction, I mean, was something that, I mean, it's not a team sport. I mean, it's all on you. I mean, you are the one directly in the limelight. You're the one on whom your performance depends, and I mean, as opposed to a team sport. But then, of course, playing cricket taught me a lot about team spirit, about fairness, and a lot of there are so many rules in cricket. Taught you to have to abide by rules as well, and so on. So I learned a lot, I must say, and like I said, it was my first love, but of course, I gravitated to what I succeeded more.
Yeah, I get that. And you see, for me, I feel like you got the fundamentals from cricket just from listening to you. So the discipline, ensuring that you play nicely with your peers, all of that, the fundamentals that you need to kind of go on.
However, the grit of athletic training, track and field training, I mean, that is perhaps the sport that I know of where training is most grueling and it's not as much fun. I mean, even when you practice in football or cricket, you hit a ball for 6. It can be a practice session, but the thrill that you get and so on. But the grueling nature of the repetitions that you have to do when running, sometimes uphill in thick sand, doing so many reps, so many sprints and so on, it was very demanding, not as enjoyable. But nonetheless, and that is where I would say the toughness came. You learn to be tough, learn not to give up, learn to fight against adversity. I think in that I got that experience.
Nice. Now, just speaking to present day, you being, one of the ministers with responsibility for youth development and sports, and more so, the St. Lucia Sports Academy being within your constituency of Groseley. Tell us, a little bit about what it means to you that there's now an academy.
Well, it certainly means a lot. I mean, I wish in my day I had that good fortune to have such an institution available. I think what it does is to actually channel talent. There's a lot of talent that has gone down the drain here in St. Lucia, not because of the lack of the ability, but because of lack of focus, lack of management, because some people have to be managed, because of the fact that, people were left to their own devices. And if you're not a strong, focused person, then you could easily go astray.
Sure.
And so we lost a lot through that. And not to mention, the earlier you begin to hone the talents of your athletes, young athletes, the better. And they learn to develop good habits, the proper techniques, and all of that. And we just learned in my day as we went along on your own.
Right.
And so your technique may have been flawed, and a simple correction of that flaw may have made you a far more successful player.
Right.
But people developed as they went along, and by chance, by watching sometimes the professionals on television, by watching other more accomplished athletes, but the coaching was hardly there. And in life, I mean, not just in sports, but in life, a little coaching goes a long way in directing, in sharpening the skills, and in keeping you on track in terms of harnessing the talent that is available. Because the basics sometimes, if not consolidated, can lead to disaster down the road, and deny you of the success that you could have otherwise achieved.
Nice. And not only the basics, I feel like also one of the conversations that come up a lot when you talk about athletes and their training and education is the balance between academics and athletics as well. So speak to how you think, or how important you think it is for an athlete to have that balance. Did you have that balance?
Well, I must say, I grew up with a single mother who was at work most of the time, so I didn't have supervision after school or anything like that. So it was get home as soon as I can, drop the school bag and onto the playing field. Come back home, and if you're so tired that you just go to sleep and so on. So perhaps I'm not the model student, but of course, we didn't have back in the day the guidance to show us how to better manage our time and how to juggle, different commitments and so on. But and of course, we were discouraged from participating in sports. My parents thought it was a waste of time, really,
Right.
and that you should engage in more productive things. But I think today we know better. We know that a healthy body supports a healthy mind, and it does not. An engagement in sports does not take away from your academic ability. It enhances it.
Right.
Because the fitter you are, the better you can focus and concentrate, for example, and the sharper your faculties would be. And so I think even what can be extrapolated from your experience in sports can apply to your academics. Because I remember as a young teacher, I was asked to teach Standard 6, which does not exist anymore. But those were the children who did not make it at common entrance to go to secondary school. And their parents gave up on them, the system gave up on them, everybody gave up on them. They saw themselves as failures and so on. And so they were very truant. They missed school a lot. They were not attentive. They were not provided with the equipment and supplies that they need and all of that. And they were very rebellious by and large. And here I was, 18, 19, teaching people who are 15 years old, just a few years younger than I am, some of them on the playing field with me on afternoons. I had to find a way to work with them and to get them to at least control the truancy and the rebellious nature and all of that. And what I did was to make it fun for them. For example, when I had to teach area, that's kind of abstract to the average person, brought them on the playing field and showed them the penalty box. Say, how many times you think, if you have to put your foot in this box, how many of your feet would be necessary and so on. And there the concept of area was brought out. Say, okay, instead of walking there and back and forth and counting how many times your feet go, there's a simple way of doing it. Like, measuring that distance here, measuring that distance. And let's say that distance, that 12 inches is your foot. It will take how many feet of your feet to do that and so on. And they saw it as fun. They saw it, And there are many concepts that I taught in that way, relating it to real life. And the curriculum at the time, I didn't think lend itself to any measure of practicality to them, on relevance to them.
Right.
And so I'll go to the bank, get some withdrawal slips. These are things that we all have to do, whether you're a university graduate or a school dropout.
True.
I taught them how to fill out a simple thing like a withdrawal slip, how to fill out a departure form. Back in the day, you go to the
Life
airport, you
skills,
know,
yes.
life skills. And so they saw the relevance of those things and they were interested in it, you know. And so that is how I got their cooperation. They saw school as more interesting, and we had some fun.
That sounds really good. I feel like, teaching is something that you could still probably do
Yes.
now. One of the things that people also, when you think of athletics, you think of competitiveness and you think of how athletes prepare for the game. One of the songs that you mentioned was "I Have to Be King Tonight." Was that your battle cry before 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 stepping onto the playing field?
Well, in a lot of things that I do, I remember that song. I saw the performance. I mean, that was a really inspiring performance, really motivational performance. And the words itself, when you tell yourself that, you don't go out bragging, that kind of thing. We don't have that culture here. But, you tell yourself that I have to prevail, that I must, come out on top and so on. And a song like that lends itself very well to that kind of thinking.
Yes, very true. Yeah. So let's take a little minute to listen to "I Have to Be King Tonight" by Invader.
There's an observation I would like to bring to your attention. And this thing goes on at every calypso competition. Right now, if you want to control the monarchy, you have to sing a political or a social commentary. You have to sing about some past political events, about how taxpayers' money badly spent, always expounding on a situation, never offering a solution, singing the news that we see on television, showing a complete lack of imagination. So if the judges do their jobs right, I have to be king tonight. Cause who's the man will supply you with proper diction? Papa Veda. Let me hear you, Lucia. Papa Veda. Who's the man will give the island proper representation? Papa Veda. I said the mass man.
All right, so we're back and we're talking about some of the biggest influences in your life. One of the things that impacted you, that made you the person that you are today. If you were to speak to that, what would you say an experience in your life, a moment in your life that impacted and led to the person that you are today?
Well, I think it was the single moment I could point to is when my mother suffered a stroke. Back then, I was a student at the St. Lucia Teachers College. I had not taught before, but I went straight from secondary school on the strength of my subjects. Okay. I almost said CXCs, but it was both CXCs and GCs. That was the period when the transition was taking place. So I did both. Okay. And on the strength of that, I went straight to Teachers College. And I did not have a salary like the teachers did, but I had a stipend. Okay. And of course, I had to pay transport, get lunch, and all of that. But my mother provided support because she worked, and when she fell sick, she no longer worked. And I mean, it became tough on the stipend to do what I had to do. And so I missed school a lot. Okay. Like the guys would say these days, I had to go on my little hustle, and so that took me away from school quite a bit. So much so that at the end of the school year, I was not allowed to do the final exam because my attendance was not sufficient. Okay. Okay, you had to have at least 80% attendance. I mean, needless to say, I had less than that. And so I was asked to repeat. I mean, I couldn't afford that, so I dropped out, And I got myself a teaching job as an untrained teacher, of course. And then a year later, I went back to Teachers College, but this time on a salary. Now, that experience taught me so much. I mean, to become more self-reliant, to become more independent, to become more resilient, to become adaptable, and at the same time I do, along with my brother, to take care of my mother, and so challenges, that's when real life challenges started to hit home. The home became the responsibility of my brother and I. And so, I mean, I was just living before that carefree. I mean, I didn't know how the light bills were paid. I didn't know the water bills were paid, and so. But all of a sudden, those were realities that were before you, and we had to be juggling, the two of us, to take care of that, like, get the medication. Because apart from the hypertension, my mother also suffered from diabetes, and so she was on permanent medication for high blood pressure and for diabetes and other complications that she had. And so it was a tough battle for us. And I think that is the single most impactful moment in terms of an experience, because it just really changed my life a lot. And while I'm not suggesting that I was living a life of affluence before that, living a more of a carefree life. I mean, I didn't have responsibilities, you know, and life was good despite the limitations, you know. Yes.
Now, you know, just listen to you speak about turning such an experience into something that worked for you. Any advice you would give to anybody coping with something similar? Most people crumble under, you know, the pressure that life has to give sometimes. So what advice would you give? Well,
I say when you find yourself faced with adversity, you have to take a step back sometimes, analyze your situation, and come up with a plan. Do not just throw your hands in the air and give up, because there's always a way out, a way around, a way over or under.
That is true.
And so I believe situations create circumstances, but circumstances do not necessarily have to determine your destiny.
Sure.
And so irrespective of what experiences you have in life, you can always bounce back. You know, I liken myself to a rubber ball sometimes, you know, and when I'm down, I always bounce back. So you hit me against the wall and I bounce back. The harder you hit me, the harder, you know, the more bounce you back. Yeah. So I have that kind of mentality because, I mean, in a way, I was a school dropout, okay? And that is tantamount to failure in our society. I didn't just give up on myself. And, I mean, there are comments being made, people cast remarks and so on. But let me say something to you. I mean, in the face of adversity, that is where you have to find your inner strength. Do not depend on others for that determination, that drive, that motivation. You know, find it within yourself. If you find it elsewhere, that's fine. But depend on you for that.
That's some solid advice. Yeah. I think that's one. If there's anything that I'm taking from that, this would be it. Find your inner strength. You know, fast forward to today. You know, one of the things that I feel like many successful people have is, you know, a daily routine, something that gets them going in the morning, something that you know, every day they do it to start their day. Do you have something like that? What's your go-to
most definitely routine? I mean, I would not classify myself as being religious, but I consider myself to be spiritual.
Okay.
I start my day with prayer, and irrespective of what, my wife and I pray on a morning. And mind you, my wife is not here now, but we pray on a morning. Thanks to technology, we do it virtually.
That's quite nice.
And, you know, and that is first order of the day. I also have lived an active life. I know the value of physical activity. Training is a big part of my life, whether it be relaxation, relieving stress, making me feel better about myself, taking care of my health. All of that comes in the package, you know, of my drive to exercise. And that is one thing I do on the morning, and I prefer to exercise in the morning.
Okay.
I do exercise now. I don't talk about sports anymore, but I engage in exercise on the morning. That's another thing. And then one thing I must do on the morning, and that was from my childhood, growing up with my mom, and when she was at work leaving us with my grandaunt and so on, you start the day with a hot beverage. You have to drink tea in the morning. Right now it has metamorphosized into a concoction for me, a concoction for me.
When you say a concoction,
well,
what are you talking about?
I mean, in the past you took the orange leaf or the longette, or if you had some green tea or the cocoa tea or something. I, today, start my day, you'll be very impressed to hear. It will be very interesting. Let's just put it this way. I have my own COVID-19 concoction. So I started by drinking just bush tea. I like bush tea, whether it is lemongrass or basil or all of those things. I started mixing them.
Okay.
Then I started with lemon, adding lemon to it.
The actual lemon?
Actual lemon, squeezing lemon, and I get lemon from my farm, fresh lemon.
Okay.
I actually add lemon to it. But of late, and don't ask me for any scientific basis, don't ask me for...
I'm laughing already.
Okay, I mix ginger, turmeric, chichima,
Okay, yes.
lemongrass, garlic.
Garlic.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Is there anything else? And I squeeze a lemon in it, and I drink that in the morning.
Okay, so I understand the health benefits. I can tell where
Right.
each thing brings in. But how does that taste though?
Actually, I've acquired a taste for it, and it does not taste bad to me.
Do you add sugar
My
in there?
my children have a different view. I don't use sugar.
You don't use sugar.
No, and that is something from way back when my mother suffered a stroke, and she was diabetic. She did not use salt or sugar. I can still recall the first day I ate some rice and chicken without salt. Even when you add the salt afterwards, it's not the same.
It's not the same.
But I will not miss salt now, nor sugar. I drink anything without salt or sugar. I mean, I eat out, so I end up eating salt. I consume sugar when I'm out, but at home, I don't.
That's impressive. That is very impressive. Now, you did mention, your wife being away, but you're still taking time to, pray together. And you as a public figure, I must ask, is there any pressure or with you being a public figure in public life? How do your family cope with that?
Well, I mean, it's their pressure. I mean, but that's a chosen path for me. I decided that I wanted to be in it, but they did not make that decision.
Right.
So you can imagine what it is like for them. I mean, you are under the microscope constantly. You are under scrutiny all of the time. You have no privacy. And so especially for my children growing up, it was tough for them. Not to mention the fact that I did not spend as much time as I should have as a father with them, because I was always gone, I was some meeting and that kind of thing. The experiences that I wanted to share with them as children, I did not get the chance to do so.
Okay.
Nonetheless, I am fortunate in that I have a very good relationship with my children. And so I'm blessed in that regard. I think I had some impact on them and so on. But if you ask them, they would have preferred if I was not in public life. I think that should sum it up to you.
Yes,
And
it does.
I am one of the parliamentarians who live in my constituency. And the part of my constituency that I live in is the actual town. I live just on one of the streets in the town. So it's not uncommon to pass by my house at 6 in the morning and see people out there waiting for me. So as soon as I emerge, I have to engage. And so on. I don't make a fuss about it. That's the opportunity some people have to meet me, to see me, to speak to me. And so I now have to cater for that. So if I have an appointment with you at 8, it takes me 15 minutes. I can't leave home 7:45.
Right.
I have to come out before that because I know I have to make
engage
provision, make allowance for the time that I will spend engaging people just right in front of my door.
I get that. And I also know what it's like to live, in a small community or to be well known within the community. So I can imagine, you being in public life, that comes with rumors, that comes with whether it's true or not, you hear something about yourself and you're hearing it for the very first time. You never even knew that about yourself. And I can imagine. That's why Vent by Tennyson John is on your list.
Well, seriously. I mean, it really spells out my own thinking and my feeling about it. Because if you have to worry about everything people say about you, I mean, you're not going to live a happy life. So at the end of the day, I've even adopted an approach and attitude that, look, if they don't talk about you, then you're not worth much. And that, like my grand aunt used to tell us, I mean, people throw stones after ripe mangoes, not green ones. And so, if they don't target you, then maybe you're not making an impact. And so I turn it into a positive in the sense that, I don't internalize it, take it to heart. I don't take it personal, and so I just see it as it is and let it just run off my back like water off a duck's back. And it was a tough time for my children to deal with that. Because do not forget, they are more on social media than I am. They listen to news like everybody else. They hear those things about me. And they wonder, not just me, but that is the case with children of public figures. And some of the people who engage in malice and that kind of behavior do not recognize what they are doing to not just the individual, but others who are associated with the individual.
Very true.
But I guess such is life. I guess you have to just get used to it. I speak to them about it from time to time. We discuss it, and they see me laugh about it. So I think as time went on, they began to, trivialize it a little and cope with it better.
I get that. And I think that song is a reminder for all of us for sure. So let's take a little moment and listen to that one, Vent by Tennyson John.
Another of my favorite artists.
Do good, they going to talk. Do bad, they going to talk. They're gonna talk regardless. So what are you gonna do? You gonna stop doing you? I don't think so.
Yo, Teddy, say what you want to say.
Something on my chest, I want to express it. Let me ask you a question. Can I say what I want to say? I want to say what I want to say. Can I say what I want to say? I really want to say it. People don't know ya, but they won't judge you. They talking about ya. Must be something about you. Smile in your face and talking you bad and making up things that far from the facts. Why you talking and talking and talking about me? I'll be pressing on, doing my thing. I'm telling you, please don't judge me. God don't put you to watch me. He don't like ugly, so tell them keep their eyes off me. Off of me, off of me, off me, off of me, off of me, off of me. Keep on talking, you got ballet, 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 talking. Ballet, 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 ballet. Keep on talking. You think it easy? They bad mind and envy. They can walk in my shoes. Then let me hear you. They playing safe.
All right, so we're back with the questions. This is Who Made Melodies, and we're having a chat with Honorable Lenard Montoute. Honorable Montoute, we've spoken about your childhood. We've gone through your daily routine. Let's talk about your pastimes. How do you spend your free time? And I can imagine that you don't get much free time. So when you do, you want to ensure that you're engaged in things that you like. So how do you spend your free time?
Well, I spoke about sports, which was a big part of my life and a major engagement of mine. But the truth is, I love music. I'm a lover of music. Never mind that I can't sing, I can't play an instrument. That does not give any indication of how much I appreciate and love music. I believe there is a song for every aspect of life, every situation you can face in life. There is a song that addresses it. And so listening to music has always been a pastime of mine, a form of relaxation for me. And even when I'm doing my chores, I listen to, well, I don't sing for people to hear, but I sing, I'm one of the bathroom singers, So music, is something that I love. I'm always humming or, singing a song in my mind. Growing up in my day, I listened to the radio a lot. It was a big deal seeing how many songs you can learn from the radio.
Yes.
The words of the songs and so on. And so I listened to a lot of songs, got to learn the songs and learn lessons even from those songs and even vocab, And I got to appreciate language too from music because, even when you look at the play on words that, especially in our local calypso.
Yes.
And so I have always loved music. That's one of my main pastimes. I like to, these days, go and take drives, long drives, off-road drives, countryside drives. I find it very relaxing. I find it very rejuvenating, and I spend some time on my farm as well. Not that I do too much work in terms of farm work, but I find it a form of physical activity that brings me much satisfaction. Harvesting something that you planted is such an exhilarating experience.
Yes.
Makes you feel like a child, and it's just so satisfying, so fulfilling, so therapeutic. That these are the things that I do in my pastime, in my free time to relax. And
What encouraged you to have a farm?
Well, I've always loved nature. We grew up with things planted, and mind you, I grew up in the town of Grosley. My home is on 4,000 square feet of land, a small house, a lot. But it has gotten small over the years because it used to be a big place.
Right, I can imagine. I can imagine.
As a child, we played cricket in the backyard, We had our chicken coop in the backyard. We had trees in the backyard, breadfruit, coconut, oranges, everything. We had our plots as well, my brother and I, where I planted my peas, he planted his things. And so that is an experience I had growing up, and I always enjoyed it. And not to mention, like I said to you, harvesting and consuming what you grow. Not forget about the health benefits of it, because actually know what you're eating.
Yes, sure.
But the therapeutic, fulfilling nature of that experience
Going from a seed
is something
to seeing
that,
the plant.
right, you cannot buy that. And so farming is something that I like and I enjoy, and it will continue to be a part of my life, maybe more so in the coming years.
That's good to hear. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Speaking about your love for music, and trust me, I understand not being able to sing or play an instrument. I think that's when you love it even more.
Yeah.
That's when you appreciate it.
Well, I always say to people, the only musical instrument that I played growing up was the radio.
Just speaking to that, your love for music, and even earlier you alluded to, listening to musicians, Indonesian musicians from the 70s. One of the songs that you mentioned, and I have a gist for that song, but I want you to explain to me why you like this song. Is If by Paley.
Well, you see, we all have our fantasies, our imagination can go wild, and and just imagine if this was so and if that was so, and and I think that song captures it very well. But then even the examples that he uses in the song are so interesting, so riveting. And so that is a song I like so much. And when it comes to woodcraft, Pele was a master.
He was.
There are so many songs. Wrong Position is one of those that I remember. The way he brings it across, it is not crass, but at the same time, it communicates the message in a very skillful manner.
True.
That is at times even entertaining, humorous, but at the same time, a serious message is communicated. And so Pele was one of the icons of St. Lucian Calypso that, I have the highest regard for as well, And so there are so many songs of his that I love so much, and of course, that was one of the first persons that I know as a recording artist. Back in the 70s, he had this album with, he had a Suzette hit before Herb Black had his Suzette hit. He had a Christmas album as well that still plays today, till this day, yes. And so, songs like If were recorded as well back then in the 70s and so on. And so, I love that song so much because I always say to myself, well, if this and if that, And so, that is a song that I love, yeah.
Nice. If by Paley. Let's take a listen.
It would be if there was no matrimony, and if I could get the chance to have any woman that pleases me, and I would live my life in a castle with 100 girls to look after me. But then that life I could only live if a few $1 million was mine to give. Yes, I tell you, if plenty things were not as they are, like the bad roads we have here in St. Lucia, if there was no work and life was one great big spree, what a malicious, wicked place this world would be. And let me tell you, I can't help but think, what would be my condition if I was a roller toilet paper?
All right, welcome back. We're now talking about goals, because we've been talking a lot about your childhood. You've been telling us a lot about you as of present. But let's talk about your aspirations. What are some of the goals that you've set for yourself? Whether it's long term, whether it's short term, you're looking to just medium-term goals. What are you aspiring to?
Well, if I were to talk about my long-term goals, it would be to see my community, Grosile, my constituency, become more self-sufficient, more independent. I want to see more evidence of leadership among my people. I want us to start, seeing ourselves as people who can take control of our own destiny, not just be bystanders and observe what happens and how our future is shaped. That we actually take possession of, the direction in which, our future goes. In terms of a medium-term goal, I would say, for me personally, it is to plan my active retirement.
Okay.
And I say active retirement, I'm not about to go into any rocking chair, and just fade into oblivion. I intend to be active during my retirement, not just physical activity for the sake of health and so on, but to be out and about, and to be able to participate in my grandchildren's life if I am lucky enough to have grandchildren, because I don't as yet, and to do the things with them that I did not get to do with my own children. Okay. Short term, I need not say, it is continue to be the parliamentary representative of Grosley, and to continue the work that I have started in terms of the progress and development of my community and my people.
It's like, I could see that as a short-term goal, of course. Of
Yes.
course. One of the things that you also mentioned as being one of your songs, and it also speaks to your portfolio as social justice minister, was Police Muti Monjimi. That was the song.
Yes.
And the story that I know, because I think I was quite young at the time, but the story I know surrounding Police Muti Monjimi, there was a lot of controversy around it. I remember, for some reason, I think I have the story twisted, but I know there were people in the hills, and there was something to do with marijuana being the focus. And we have been talking about the decriminalization of marijuana. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me just say, believe it or not, as far back as 2001, I publicly stated on a platform that I believe that marijuana should be decriminalized. I stated then that if someone can smoke tobacco, someone can drink whiskey or rum, and they are not classified as being criminal, there's no reason why.
And you still
I maintain that position till this day.
Okay.
And I'm not advocating for the smoking of anything.
Okay.
It is unhealthy to smoke. It is detrimental to your health to smoke. I'm saying if you smoke, you may be considered not too wise to do so,
Right.
but you cannot be considered a criminal to do so. And I've always been against criminalizing our people for things that are not criminal offenses. And so I think the Rastas back in the day, in the 70s and so on, were harassed, unjustifiably.
Okay.
And they went through a torrid time because they were the ones predominantly who engaged in the consumption of marijuana as,
Sure.
as a recreational drug. And so when you look at it today, it is fashionable now for everyone to jump on the bandwagon to say it. When I said it, it was not as fashionable.
Right.
But I will continue to say it. I've even gone as far as publicly advocating, and I've heard the representative for Denry North repeat that sentiment recently.
Okay.
I've publicly advocated, and it's years now that I've been doing so, that the criminal records of St. Lucians who were convicted on account of the consumption of marijuana, smoking a joint, should be expunged. I remember my first experience as a parliamentarian back in 2006 when a gentleman came to me and said to me that he had gotten an offer to travel to the United States. Mind you, he was going to a part of the United States where the consumption of marijuana as a recreational drug was not a crime.
Okay.
But he could not qualify to get a visa because to get a visa, you must present a police record. And a police record stated that he had a conviction. And the conviction was because he smoked he was caught with a couple of joints. And I thought that just wasn't justice in itself. And so I felt, rather than criminalizing our people in that way, we should come to terms with the reality, be objective, and to expunge the record. And I'm calling for that till this day. And yes, I'm in government and I will continue to advocate for it. And I'm hoping my government will take heed. And I do not know if it is still possible during this current term that it be done. But if that it can be done, it should be done. That people who are now considered to be criminals because of marijuana conviction, their records should be expunged.
Now, the song itself, Police Muti Monjimi, why is that added on your list? Is it because of your stance? when
Well,
it comes
yeah,
to
quite
that?
apart from being a calypso lover, especially local calypso.
Yes.
I mean, dancehall music was something I grew up with and was always a big thing to me. I thought, first and foremost, forget the message. I thought that song by Aitation, then Jashin and those guys
Yes.
was a really great song to my mind. I mean, I listened to that as a song I enjoyed, I loved it, and so on. And at the same time, you couldn't help growing up back in those days but to be influenced to a great extent by the pro-black, pro-consciousness messages of reggae music back then. And if it is one thing that the Rastafarian movement did for us as black people, is to bring about a certain consciousness in us, to have more pride in ourselves, and to stand up as black men and women, and to, take our rightful place in society as who and what we are. And so, and even then, I felt it was an injustice what was being done. And mind you, I've never condemned the police. We make laws. I say we today because I'm a parliamentarian.
Yes. True.
We make laws. The police simply carry out the laws. And that is their duty and their job to do so. So, yes, the Rastas were condemning the police because the police were the one carrying out the actions against them. But really and truly, I mean, our leaders have to take that responsibility. And I think it is about time that we ease those burdens of our people and, become more humane in our approach to dealing with people. And there's lots of things on our statute books or in our laws that are archaic, outdated, inhumane, unjust, that we need to go away.
Look at that. Let's take a listen to Police Mute Mondimi by Aitation.
Police vive Mondimi road. Police vive Mondimi. Police vive Mondimi road. Fini faki samedi uche. Libe piyote. Fini faki samedi uche. Libe poverté.
Welcome back to Homemade Melodies. We are having a chat with Honorable Lenard Montoute, and we've discussed, so much already and listened to so many of his interesting homemade melodies, some of the songs that he, enjoys the most when it comes to our St. Lucian music. Let's talk about biggest influences in your life. Who would you say was your biggest influence?
Without a doubt, without thinking twice, my mother.
Your mom?
My father died when I was about 3 years old.
Okay.
I literally grew up with my mother. My mother, never mind my height came from my father.
Okay.
My mother was a diminutive figure, small lady,
Yes,
but powerful woman, and an indomitable nature. She was the kind who overcame adversity, stood up, in the face of negativity, and conquered. I mean, she provided for us a life that if I did not know better, I would thought that she had it all to give. I never went hungry, despite the limited resources. My mother had to work when my father died. What she did, she worked at a hotel, in the kitchen, in the laundry, what some people consider to be menial jobs. When the tourist season, when there was a slow season, she would be laid off and she would have to find things to do. She did whatever she had to do to keep the finances coming in to put bread on our table, whether it be making charcoal, rearing animals, pigs, and so on. Whatever it took, she did it. And of course, as children, it was being done for our interest, for our benefit. We were forced to join in and play a part. So I know what it is to make coals. Not the most fun, most pleasurable engagement undertaking. And I have respect for people who, do those tasks, perform those tasks, and so on. But more so, my mother had such a positive outlook on everything, and nothing got her down. And she would lecture us and speak to us. Many of the lessons we didn't take heed of then, but we recognize the value, the relevance, and importance of it later in life. And that's the person I find myself quoting the most.
your mom.
My mother. And so she shaped me to a great extent. She taught me, despite your limited means, do not limit your ambitions, do not limit your goals, and that where you are today does not necessarily have to determine where you reach tomorrow. And so all of those little things, I remember back in the day when things were bad, and if we had to eat without salaison, we didn't have relish, no meat on the food and so on, she would say, never mind that. Once your belly is full, when you go out there, your belly is not a glass case, nobody knows what's in there. So just go out there positive, your belly is full just like everybody else. And that kind of spirit, to make light of adversity,
Right.
To conquer, the odds.
That's kind of like a warrior spirit.
That's right, and so I think that shaped me to a great extent, and that, that giving up attitude is not a part of my being. I was not nurtured that way, and I thank my mother for that.
And I can imagine these are some of the lessons that you'd also want to pass on to your children as well.
Most definitely. Although I must say, and I'm not advocating that younger people like yourself and my children should have had the hard life that people like myself had, and it was even harder for my mother back in the day. I'm not advocating that, but I think it built character too. It taught you a lot. It made you more resilient. And so looking back at the time, I didn't really particularly enjoy it, but looking back, I am grateful for it.
You're grateful for it.
Yeah.
Just listen to you speak about your mother and some of the influence that she had on you. I grew up in the community of Canaries, and one of the songs that you mentioned actually brought me back to my time in primary school. I remember that some of the songs my mother used to say, hey, don't sing that. And I didn't understand why at the time.
Yeah.
But, just listening to the lyrics now, why did you decide to add this one to your list, Auntie Boo?
Well, you see, when I listen to songs that are considered to be smutty or even raunchy, like today, it's almost as if it's classless.
Yes.
But back then, the same message was communicated, but in style, with class, exactly. And so you had to read between the lines to get the message, and so it was still palatable. But at the same time, it was communicating the same message that those smutty songs communicate today. And plus, I really love the whole song and, the whole message that was in it and so on. I'm a West Indian, so, I just love that song. And, the words, the Creole words that were used in those songs, some rich Creole is being used, Veti Edouard Bamouin, that kind of thing. I just love, and I'm a person who has a lot of admiration and appreciation for the Creole language. The expressions in Creole, I believe, and I know two other languages, English and German, but the expressions in Creole is unrivaled by any other language. And you cannot translate Creole and still have the essence.
The power.
When you think of some of the phrases, the expressions and so on in Creole.
Welcome back. Now we're nearing, the end of our time for homemade melodies, and we've covered so much. It's been so much fun thus far. I feel like we've had some laughs, and you've also given us some, serious things to think about as well. We've spoken about your influences, and some of the things that have influenced you. What keeps you motivated? Because you've talked about the trials, you've talked about, the adversity and how difficult sometimes it is. to be in the limelight, to be a public figure. How do you keep going?
You see, sometimes you cannot, in your circumstances, see a way out. You cannot see the light, and you consider giving up. I mean, there are those who even contemplate suicide. Not just giving up, but giving up life entirely. But I have learned along the way that just about anything and everything can change with time. And that is a reason to go on. Because when you're down, there's only one way, one direction to go, up. And when things are bad, if it's really bad, then it cannot get worse. So there's a reason to persevere, it can only get better. So with the passage of time, not only can things change, but I think revelations are made. The truth is revealed in time, and the future is shaped and revealed with time. So that keeps me motivated. That gives you a purpose, a reason for looking forward and going forward and not giving up.
That's really important that you say that, because, one of the things that I was thinking of, given, all the talk with, just COVID-19 and, you mentioning that one of your short-term goals is to represent the community of Grocery. I was thinking just recently, if I were, a representative for a community, I would not want to go up in this time because, COVID-19 makes it that much more difficult. And I guess that is what you're applying to the situation of not giving up.
That's right. And that much more interesting too.
You like the challenge.
That's right.
You like the challenge. Yeah. I get that. Going back to your portfolio as social justice minister, and we've spoken about a lot of things. One of the songs that you mentioned, again, it's a calypso, and I know we've spoken about your love of calypsos, and Her Black being one of the people that you love as well. Another one of the songs, again, that speaks to social justice or a social justice event was Unsolved Mysteries. Tell us why you decided to put that one on.
Well, first of all, that song brought to the fore, to my mind, a lot of things that exist right in front of us that we overlook in our society. First of all, that there are some people without a voice. That some experiences some of our people go through, that is just brushed aside, overlooked, and we move on as if it's nothing. I think the Calypsonian is said, in local Calypso, we say that the Calypsonian is the voice of the people.
Yes.
Politicians like to say that they are, but, but the Calypsonians really are.
The voice of the people.
Calypso doesn't only chronicle history, it brings out actual situations of the day. And it highlights some of the ills, some of the triumphs, some of the accomplishments of society. I think that was a sad situation, and that was captured in song by Her Black. But not just the fact that he highlighted an injustice and he brought it out and didn't just let that life go as if it was nothing, but the way it was done. I mean, the solemnity of the melody itself invoked a feeling that you had to be heartless not to read it.
Even though you don't know the actual story behind it.
Right. And again, I go back to wordcraft. There's some lines in that song that are just, super. I mean, I remember a line in the song that says, check the foul while you watch the play. He's talking about foul play.
Right.
He's talking about there was foul created, something a foul, and so and it's just the way it was done, and in just those lines, I mean, the whole situation was captured, And I remember in a line in the song that talk about so I think when the guy cried, even the dog barked or cried, that kind of thing, and things you can relate to if you're a real grounded person.
Yes.
And his voice, the melody he used, the use of the flute in that song. All of that just made that song, a forever favorite of mine. And I want to say that Her Black is one of my Calypsonians that I admire, one of my favorites, but there are many others.
Okay.
I mean, you asked me about some songs. I can only give you some songs.
Yeah.
But there are many songs that I love. There are many artists like Alpha that I really love. You know, my ritual. You know,
Yes,
freedom song that he sung. And
Do you jump?
I've never jumped carnival.
Okay.
But I hardly miss a calypso tent.
I get
You
that.
know, and I do not know, my children don't miss a carnival. They always jump.
They're always on the road.
Yeah, I don't know where they got that from, but you know, and I have nothing against it. It's just that that's not me. But I am very much involved in calypso. I've been going to calypso tents from time immemorial. And if you talk about the history of calypso, I mean, of late I've lost track a bit. But when you talk about calypso over the ages, I can enter in that discussion. I mean, people like Morgie, you know, I mean, of not too distant vintage, Morgie, Pep. Vader is a master, I must say. And, you know, those guys are, you know, people that I have high regard for. And back in the day, from Grosile, you know, well, of recent vintage, you have Bachelor, that's a guy from Grosile, don't forget that. You have people like Lucian Parrott, who made his mark. And I remember attending a show in Toronto in 1986, okay, at Caribana, and went crazy, and Gabi and the Trinidadian Calypsonians were there. Parrott represented us as a St. Lucian, and I was proud to see him, you know, because he was a performer in his day. Unfortunately, he's now incapacitated by a stroke.
Right.
But, you know, these are people that remain in my memory. And of course, not to mention the fact that he was from Grosile, that's someone I knew personally.
Right.
So, you know, you can understand.
So you're feeling that in your chest. You're
That's
feeling
right.
the pride.
That's right, you know. And so I want to encourage, you know, our young artists, our musicians, to continue doing the work that they do. I must say, you know, thanks to people like Tennyson John and those guys, because not only do I enjoy the rhythms and the harmony and the melody, but I have a place in my heart for the woodcraft.
Right.
I've seen that diminish a little, but thanks to people like Tennyson John and those people, we're seeing that this is, you know,
Carrying on,
coming back here.
I get that. Just in case you've never heard it, let's take a listen to Unsolved Mysteries by Who Black.
Just too mysterious, oh now. Dubai, No way, it isn't true at all. No, it isn't true at all. The way they discard the youth as a hard criminal. He wasn't no hard criminal. It's true that he was going through some difficult times. Yes, man, some difficult times. He's been to jail for committing some minor crimes. For committing some minor crimes. The announcement of his death came out like a shock. The papers had to react, people had to talk. They had reasons to believe that the brother could live if the police had let him breathe. Don't be shy, don't lie. From what did the guy die? Oh yeah. Who lie, really lie, they really know how to lie. Dubai. After they did a postmortem, it became very clear there was a big problem. Yes, there was a big problem. The doctor said he was killed by a piece of plastic. Yes, man, an empty plastic. But never mentioned any substance found with it. Any substance found with it. Some of his ribs are broken and his throat was bruised. Yet police say no excessive force was used. Before I go my way, I have one last thing to say. Check the foul while you watch the play. Don't be shy, don't lie. From what did the guy die?
We're nearing the end of Homemade Melodies with Honorable Lenard Montoute. One question I think that is fitting to have left for the end. We spoke about, you actively planning for your retirement, and that's a long-term goal. What's your idea of the perfect retirement?
Well, like I said earlier, I do not intend to fade into oblivion. I want to have an active retirement. I want to continue to be productive. And I think I can best serve my community then in the role of being mentor, and sharing my experience, providing guidance and counsel to the younger folk. Not to mention, if I'm blessed with grandchildren, I will want to play a major role in their lives. And who knows, I may become St. Lucia's first NBA manager, managing one of my grandkids, because my son is taller than I am.
Oh, wow. If that's possible.
And so, I don't want to hang
too much on
my future on the poor children are not even born yet. But, I'm just saying, a point I'm making that I want to be active in my retirement. I can see myself doing my gardening. I can see myself still being physically active in terms of, maybe not sport, but exercise. I will continue to do so. And I want to continue to be in touch and connected to nature, like going to the beach and doing things like that are things that thrill me. And when you look at it, things that do not require much resources, farming, you can bring your resources. Going to the beach is free, and that's why I'm one of the advocates that we should preserve as much of our recreational space as we can, like the beaches. And so I just want to have a very active, because I believe it is in my interest to do so, personally, from a health standpoint, from a longevity standpoint, and to stay sharp. And I'm not looking for relevance from the standpoint of being in any limelight or anything like that. I've had my day, and I want to be able to gracefully, bow out into my sunset. But at the same time, once I'm not dead, I'm still alive.
You're still alive. I get that. Yeah. Now, you spoke a little bit about legacy, and not necessarily, your legacy being one that people see, he did this and he did that. How would you like to be remembered? So if you were to choose the way that people remembered you?
Well, I would like them to know where I came from, and that I am a person who is at a place where would be considered very unlikely that I would be. In other words, I've said it earlier, situations create circumstances, but your circumstances do not necessarily have to shape or determine your destiny.
Sure.
And that, if nothing else, young people can look back at me and say, if Spider could have done that, I can do better.
I can do it.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah.
Now, one of the songs and the final song on your list today for Homemade Melodies is Where Are They Now? By T.C. Brown. Tell us why that song was chosen.
Well, that song is so true. It is a revelation of the kind of society that we are, the kind of people that we are, and how little we value those who have contributed, those who have made the mark, those who have set the stage for us. And I talk about not wanting to just fade into oblivion, but just think about the giants of yesteryear. Where are they now? And I first heard that song, it was not a typical calypso. I remember some of us, tent folks, used to say that T.C. Brown, as he was called back then, sang calypso in a jazz type of way. In a jazz type of way. But, that song is so rich. It is so apt. It is so true. It is so much of a revelation of who we are. And I think it brings about a consciousness at the same time that we need to wake up and recognize people for the role that they have played. Acknowledge it. Give it its just due recognition. And, at the end of the day, let those who have contributed not feel that they are not appreciated. And that is not, I must tell you, that song was not contemplated in the context of my own retirement. But then still, when you think of so many people, and he mentioned some of the
Who made
names.
an impact.
He mentioned some of the names of the people who made an impact, and it's almost a disgrace on our part, the way they were treated in the twilight years.
Nice. Honorable Montoute, I have to thank you so much for spending this time with us, just giving us the opportunity to get to know you a little bit more, where you came from, your aspirations. It's been amazing. I have to thank you so much for your time. And of course, we're wishing you the very best as you progress.
Well, I want to thank you for this opportunity, for ensuring that I will not forget where I came from. You forced me to go back, and it was a pleasure reminiscing, reflecting. It was nostalgic, I must say, at some points, and I welcomed that opportunity, and it was indeed a pleasure for me.
We're happy to hear. Of course, I have to thank you, listeners and viewers as well, for sticking with us, and we're going to close off with this one by T.C. Brown, Where Are They Now?
While some people see things and ask why, some people dream of things that never wasn't tried, yet we fail to see that's a special quality. In his prime, Sony was #1 MC. Now we can't even host a show for free foreign MCs for so we ignore good old Martino. Even the astute Sir John, the father of independence, who recently say he done, we treat with irreverence. Like Johnny Romeo, soon we'll forget him as well. Remember him? Once your novelty gone, Lucian's quick to move on to the next new bright star. Now everybody is labor. At tourism, but what about the founders they mention at all? Where are they now?
Where are they now?
Where are they now? Where are those people who used to be so popular in this country? Where are they now? We forgot them somehow. Where are they now? We forgot them somehow. Boy, I'm singing calypso.
I'm living life tonight. I'm living life, yeah. It's MR, MR, MR. Oh, oh, yeah. Turn up the music. This song is for winners. And if you're living life today, put your hands up with us. We come out here to lose control. Spreading the good vibe all around the